It's been a year since Israel waged its war on Gaza, and the hard conditions of this war are still casting a long shadow over the whole region. This conflict has devastated the healthcare system, raising fears of pandemics, with most hospitals non-operational and many individuals in urgent need of medical care. Lives have been lost and countless others bear the trauma, with nearly every child in the Gaza Strip affected by the violence. This underscores the severe humanitarian crisis at hand. Amid this disaster, global perceptions are shifting and discussions on peace are resurfacing. In this episode, we explore the complexities of Gaza's plight and the urgent need for dialogue and action. I am Karim Hatem. You're watching Q News. Welcome to Think Tank. Gaza is a land scarred by conflict, yet filled with unyielding spirits. As thousands face life-altering injuries, their struggle for healing has become a call to humanity. Join us as we uncover the urgent needs and stories that define this resilient community.
As the conflict in Gaza continues, the humanitarian crisis deepens, with the World Health Organization reporting harrowing statistics on the injuries sustained by the population. By July 23, 2024, at least 22,500 people have suffered life-altering injuries, with a staggering quarter in dire need of rehabilitation services now and for years to come. The analysis reveals that severe limb injuries alone account for between 13,455 and 17,550 cases, and tragically, between 3,105 and 4,050 amputations have been performed. Dr. Richard Peppercorn, WHO's representative in the occupied Palestinian territories, highlights the overwhelming need for support. Currently, only 17 of Gaza's 36 hospitals are partially operational, while community healthcare services are frequently disrupted due to security threats and repeated evacuations. The sole rehabilitation center in Gaza, vital for limb reconstruction and rehabilitation, ceased operations in December 2023 due to supply shortages and subsequent airstrikes. Reports indicate that 39 physiotherapists have lost their lives, further crippling rehabilitation efforts. With basic mobility aids like wheelchairs and crutches running out, the gap between urgent needs and available resources widens alarmingly. In light of this crisis, the WHO reiterates the need for a ceasefire, emphasizing that restoring healthcare services is critical to prevent further suffering and loss of life among the Palestinian people.
Now joining us now live from Geneva, Christian Lundmeier, spokesperson for the World Health Organization, to talk more about the dire situation in the Gaza Strip and about the healthcare system also in Gaza. Mr. Lundmeier, thank you for joining us on Q News. Now, can you first describe the current state of the healthcare system with a year in this war that Israel has waged on Gaza?
Yeah, with the current attacks, the ongoing attacks, and the actually very new attacks yesterday and 7 October, apparently a barrage of new attacks in the north especially, it's looking more and more dire. Although, again, it's difficult to say that it's looking more and more grim, because we've been saying this since at least 9 months, if not the whole year. Officially, 17 hospitals of the 36 are partially functioning. But partially means that sometimes a ward is only functioning and certainly not the whole hospital. So the hospitals are lacking everything. They're lacking construction and intact buildings. They're lacking fuels for operation. They're lacking medical supplies, including the most basic medicines, and they're lacking staff because staff has either been killed, is somewhere hiding and running, or is not able to come to the clinics or to the health centers. So everything which concerns a hospital is lacking.
Now, but let's talk more about what you said about the workers and the healthcare system. There's been concerns regarding the safety of these workers. Now, how do you feel the international community is targeting this issue and working towards,
you're asking about the safety,
and how they're working towards safety for the workers who are working in the healthcare system and volunteering actually for many of the international organizations?
It's a horrible situation. We have had over 500 attacks on healthcare in this year. Nearly 800 healthcare personnel have been killed. Over 765 people have been killed. Healthcare personnel, that's doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers. 990, so nearly 1,000, have been injured in these attacks. A horrible scenario for the safety. UNRWA reports more than 200 UN humanitarian staff killed. So the situation for healthcare personnel is horrible. It's as horrible as for the whole population. And that should not be the case. At least healthcare should be safe because they're the last resort, the last hope for people, not only for war injuries, for every little disease, for childhood injuries, for mothers who are pregnant, or women who are pregnant who have children. So everything needs healthcare staff. It's the last hope for people. So the fact that healthcare is not safe, the fact that an ambulance cannot get to a location because it's not safe, and because there's no fuel, and because there's no staff, is an absolute unbearable situation for the population, and it should not be the case. In any major conflict, the humanitarian aid, the medical aid, the support of the people has to be absolutely maintained.
Do you think there's enough pressure on Israel
to
regarding this point, Christian? Christian, can you hear me?
I only heard you say regarding this point.
Yes, I was asking, do you think there's enough pressure on Israel regarding this point, ensuring the safety of health workers and the staff of the international organizations in Gaza?
Every day, and nearly since exactly 1 year, every day, the UN, the World Health Organization, the International Red Cross, the health organizations, the Palestinian Red Crescent, everybody with influence has tried and is continuing to try to push and to convince the Israelis that healthcare must be maintained as a minimum basic. Let's think about the water and on top of it. And in very, very rare, no, let's not say in very rare cases, material has been coming across. Trucks of WHO and other organizations have come across to try to get other hospitals running, and some fuel has been given, but it's always too little. It's always too little. It's never enough. When there's an interest by Israel, like in the polio campaign, then it suddenly works. The first round of the polio campaign worked. It worked as planned, nearly.
Okay,
and
let's
sign.
talk a little bit more about that,
But
Christian, the polio
the nasty
campaign.
thing is that when there's apparently no interest for Israel, all help and all facilitation is too little, too late, or not coming at all.
Okay, let's talk more about the polio campaign, because there's a second round for vaccinations. What are the specific measures the WHO is implementing to ensure the successful delivery of vaccines during that challenging period? What are the lessons that you've learned from the first round?
So the polio campaign was really a really difficult operation. First, there's a plan, and then we knew from the beginning that the plan has to be adapted basically by the hour, always to the new realities. As you may recall, in the beginning, we found much more people in that first area in the north where we started than we had thought so. In the middle, I think we started. Then more people were found than planned. Because with the huge displacement and the people movements, it's very difficult to know exactly how many people are where. Normally, you go house to house in a polio campaign. You do in clinics and hospitals, but you also go simply house to house and get everybody. That is absolutely not possible at this point. And with the renewed attacks and the heightened attacks now since yesterday, there's more displacement, and people who have been in location A are now in B or in Z and will move again. And that's the biggest challenge, to make sure that you reach everyone, because it's important to reach everyone and to reach everyone a second time. So every day, the planning, the convoys, the dimensions had to be extended or changed or adjusted. And the first round was a success. And we seriously hope that the support by everyone and temporary ceasefires will again be implemented, so that the second round also is a success. But again, there's high interest on the Israeli side. So we are very positive that this may lead to a successful second round as well.
Okay, another point regarding children, Christian. Obviously, there has been reports about the mental health among the population, but children have been definitely impacted the most, as per these reports. Now, what kind of measures does the WHO intends to take in the coming days or the coming weeks to ensure the safety of many individuals and children in the Gaza Strip regarding the mental health issues, of course, during this time?
You're talking about one of the biggest challenges. I mean, we're talking about children who have lost their parents, who have lost their siblings, who have watched losing their parents and their siblings, who have looking to the sky, and every sound they hear is not a bird or anything peaceful. It's or looking at the kites they used to fly in Gaza. It's bombs and drones. The schools where they should be sitting and learning and have a safe environment are being bombed, or used as shelters and being destroyed or have been destroyed. So mental health is a crucial aspect for those children, but also for the adult ones. But of course, because also a mentally disturbed child now, this is a whole generation which is growing up with learning about destruction and war and absolute disrespect for humanitarian ways and absolute disrespect for any human life. So the impact for the long term is something we cannot even imagine. So yes, mental health is the biggest challenge, and the little aspect that we can do under these circumstances, WHO and partners are trying to provide. They're providing support in the shelters. They're providing support together with UNICEF in the remaining areas and schools, together with UNRWA in the shelters and the places. But we have to be clear, this is definitely not enough. It's like a drop in the ocean. If we're lucky, it's 2 drops in the ocean, but not enough.
There were also concerns regarding the problems regarding the pandemics that could actually spread in Gaza, and what kind of fears are we looking at? What kind of concerns are we looking at towards this point, Christian?
But the concerns are, well, first of all, I mean, many diseases like skin rashes and lung infections and hepatitis, we know has been spreading. Luckily, I would say so far we have not seen cholera, but we have seen we are seeing diarrheal diseases. So the hepatitis, the diarrheal diseases, other infections, lung infections, maybe even tuberculosis problems, all this has to be monitored and prevented. But the monitoring system is basically in shambles. The laboratories are in shambles. The surveillance systems that was functioning really well in Gaza before is in shambles. So monitoring, surveying this is a huge challenge. And with the fresh water and the sanitation situation, the upcoming winter, of course, this is only getting worse. And there's too few intact housing where people can find shelter in this coming winter. So it's a huge challenge, and it's a huge catastrophe actually for the people on the ground. All humanitarians are trying their best and to bring in as much help as possible, but it needs the political will from all sides, and it needs the political will from the warring parties, and it needs the political will from Israel.
Now, as you mentioned, the winter is upon us, and of course, there are concerns for many of the Palestinians who were forced out of their homes or displaced into places that are called safe places, but they are not, because they've been bombed and been targeted by the Israeli army. Now, what are the measures that can be taken in the coming weeks and the coming months before winter, so we can ensure the safety of these Palestinian people?
Well, as we know, I mean, a ceasefire would be definitely the solution. We know that, peace, or at least a temporary ceasefire, which would also allow finally for the hostages to be able to return. Some of them, no, the hostages are 1 year now in their situation. Let's not forget that. But for the people, they have been displaced and moved around, new attacks now since yesterday. The safe areas that are being designated as safe areas have to be safe areas. That would be one of the most important things if we cannot have a ceasefire. So we need to have at least large areas, zones, north, south, middle, everywhere, where people can actually take shelter and know that they can be safe there for months, not just maybe for 24 hours. And that is even a question. So these are the biggest challenges, which is obviously not something that we have seen so far. The military requirements apparently from the Israeli side have made it impossible. Safe zones declared on one day are suddenly being shelled and bombed the next day without any further notification. Big zones which had just been designated shelter areas are then having to be cleared again, and people moved around. So it's crazy. It's crazy for the people on the ground. They're being moved around like puppets, and at the end of the day, literally jumping from stone to stone, trying to find some shelter where they can be safe for 1 night, for 2 nights, or 3 nights. Horrible scenario.
And what kind of hospitals are we talking about when these people are displaced and they need to go to hospitals, or they need treatment? Is there any kind of treatment that can be provided for these people when they are being displaced and moving all the time?
A lot of things can be provided by the UN, who has a lot of experience in providing safety and shelter in crisis areas and in crisis scenarios. But it needs the agreements and the will of the political factions and the military factions on the ground. It would be possible to build up tent areas. It would be possible to refurbish some of the most important structures. It would be possible to refurbish, or at least to get some of the hospitals up and running again. If material is being let in, if water and supplies are being let in, if critically injured people are also being evacuated outside, and if areas are designated as safe areas, stay safe areas. Unless we have a full ceasefire, that of course would be the best of all. But we're not even realistically talking about that anymore. We're talking about how to patch the big holes with little needles and threads, while it would be so easy if the political will from so many groups would be there.
Thank you, Christian Leinmeier, a spokesperson for the World Health Organization. Thank you so much for joining us at Qnews. Now, before we dive deeper into our discussion, let's take a moment to examine Gaza's health crisis. Stay with us. As we reflect on the first anniversary of the war in Gaza, we aim to discuss its profound effects on health and humanitarian conditions, as well as the role of politicians in this crisis. We are honored to speak with Manuel Hassain, the ambassador of Palestine to Denmark, who joins us now from Copenhagen. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Now,
thank you.
Let's begin with the recent escalation in Gaza and the West Bank. Can you share your perspective on what has led to this surge in violence?
Well, actually, the escalation has been continuously growing more and more as the time passes. And today we are witnessing the paramount of this escalation and this onslaught against our innocent people in Gaza. This carnage is a badge of dishonor on the international community that is allowing still Israel to go ahead with its butchery against the Palestinian people with impunity. For us, 1 year of suffering such heavy casualties, especially when you talk about 16 to 17,000 children, let alone 8,000 women, and the rest are elderly, epitomizes best the brutality of the occupation and of Israel's systematic policy of trying to flatten Gaza and decimate the entire nation by forcefully diasporizing them into the Sinai Desert. That's the intention of Israel, is to get rid of the demography and control the geography as buffer zone, allegedly for its own security reasons.
Ambassador, now obviously what's happening on the ground has been taking a discourse of force and military action. How do you think we can bring back the political file just on the table? How can we talk politically and diplomatically to address the current situation?
Well, actually, as long as the aggression continues and with the escalation of Israel, and Israel is trying basically not to pay heed to the international community as a kind of pressure to stop this carnage and try more or less to abide by the international rule and international law, nothing is going to happen. And it is so unfortunate that the United States, which is complicit with that of Israel in conducting this war against our people in Gaza, let alone the West Bank and East Jerusalem, we will never go back to the negotiating table. And as long as Israel is procrastination, the process of signing a deal with Hamas on the release of hostages and the cessation of aggression against our people, there is no talk about diplomatic engagement or negotiations and what have you. So Israel is buying time in trying to cleanse as much as they can through the process of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and buying time in trying basically to break the will of Hamas and all the resistance movement in Gaza. It is having an open check from the United States to do so.
Talking about the U.S. ambassador, now there have been reports, and I'm sure you've seen that, there have been reports talking about the disagreement between the White House and the Israeli government, disagreement regarding the current situation right now, the aggression, the type of force that's been used, and the probable actions that Israel is going to take or could take in the coming days. What do you think of these reports?
Well, listen, actually, today President Biden is a lame duck, and the Democrats are now preparing for another round of elections. Trump is trying more or less to come back to the political scene. Now, this is a dead end. This is an era between now and the elections, let alone 100 days by the elections. The American administration cannot make any decisions that will have any kind of political weight, domestically or internationally. So when we talk about, the position of Biden, he has been telling Israel, stop the aggression, basically in southern Lebanon, try to open humanitarian assistance for the people in Gaza and what have you. Did Netanyahu pay any heed? No. Netanyahu is continuing with his strategic policy of exterminating the Palestinians and to gain as much as possible the grounds for reoccupation of Gaza and that of the West Bank. And the intention is to change the configuration of the geography in Palestine in order to fit exactly the mentality and the strategy of the settlers in the West Bank, let alone using Gaza as a buffer zone for security reasons, and that of southern Lebanon with Hezbollah. So all these remarks, all these reports did nothing. For the last 3 months, Biden has been, giving reports and telling the Israelis they should stop the war. Let's go back to the negotiation table. Let's open the borders of Rafah. Let's have humanitarian assistance. Did the Israelis respond positively? No, because they
That's
know
very alarming,
that
Ambassador, because if the pressure card of the United States on Israel is lost and Israel is disregarding any kind of statements from the international community or pressure from the international community now, what can change the discourse right now? What can apply pressure on Israel to ceasefire, to change the strategy right now?
the answer is very simple, my friend. The answer is Europe should take a stand. Countries should take a stand against Israel. They should start boycotting Israel, and they should start trying to fire all their ambassadors and try to bring Israel to the International Court of Justice. That's the only way. I don't see the Americans will budge an inch not to help the Israelis in their carnage and in their onslaught against the Palestinian people. The Europeans should wake up. They should start, cutting relationship on bilateral and not waiting for the European Union to take a certain stand that is rhetorically invalid and to a certain extent hapless and helpless when it comes to pressures against Israel. If the international community does not move on a bilateral level to boycott Israel as a country that is an apartheid country, there is nothing going to change on the ground. And the biggest price that will be paid by the Palestinian people and nobody else.
Now, I'm sure you've heard Josep Borrell, the Vice President of the European Commission, talking about the situation and the pressure on Israel and answering questions about what can the EU do. And he said many, many times that the EU has limited options when it comes to pressure on Israel. What do you think of that?
Listen, the EU can say whatever they want. Josep Borrell can say whatever he wants. First of all, Josep Borrell is persona non grata as far as the Israelis are concerned. Guterres is persona non grata as far as Israel is concerned. The Americans are trying basically to bolster the position of the Israelis. Now, all these reports, all these sayings that come out from Josep Borrell, Guterres, and what have you, it's insignificant for the Israelis. So there is no pressure. As long as the EU does not take a firm stand of boycotting and hitting the Israelis in their pocket, which means economically, nothing is going to change, my friend. All these political statements, reports, allegations, and what have you, are not going to the situation on the ground.
Okay. Now, Ambassador, what is the role of the Palestinian leadership now in addressing all of these challenges?
Well, the Palestinian leadership has been, helping as much as they can Gaza economically. We have been bearing and shouldering the responsibility of all the expenses that Gaza went through before October 7th and after October 7th. 59% of our budget goes to Gaza. Now, as far as the Palestinian Authority is concerned, look at our president in all his speeches, in all his travels, bilaterally, meeting world leaders. What is he asking? Cessation of conflict. Let's have humanitarian assistance. And then we are willing, ready, basically, to shoulder our responsibility of controlling back Gaza with the help of the international community. My president asked to go to Gaza, and he was not allowed to go to Gaza with all the pressures that the international community has put on. What do you expect from us to do?
Right. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Ambassador Manuel Hassain, the ambassador of Palestine to Denmark, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on Q News. Now, this has been our episode for Think Tank today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Karim Hatem. Stay tuned for more on Q News.